Before I begin, I acknowledge that June is National Indigenous History Month. I hope we all take any opportunity this month to appreciate and learn about Indigenous peoples. For my part, National Indigenous History Month is an opportunity to remind parliamentarians that Inuit, First Nations, and Métis are brilliant. When Indigenous peoples enter the path of forgiveness and intergenerational love, they thrive and make Canada a better country. This Parliament must do better to honor the former residential school students. This Parliament must do better to honor the children that rather than playing in playgrounds were buried by schools that they were forced to be in. If Canada had established a much better relationship and started honoring treaties with Indigenous peoples back then, we would have a much better Canada today. Turning to the emergency debate, first, Koyanamik to first responders in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Climate change is accelerating the frequency and size of disasters such as wildfires. Canadians are experiencing unprecedented forest fire seasons, and the season is only just started. Local and provincial first responders and firefighters are already overwhelmed. Manitobans, Saskatchewans, and many remote and northern First Nations communities are being forced to leave their homes due to raging forest fires. Both provinces have declared states of emergency. To date, about 8,000 people from Saskatchewan and over 17,000 people from Manitoba have been evacuated. The federal government's emergency response system is inadequate for addressing the urgent needs of evacuees, particularly Indigenous communities. The federal government must accelerate its effort to protect Canadians and lessen the impacts of climate change. Community leaders have expressed concerns about housing space and healthcare resources to those who have fled the fires. The Government of Canada needs to enact a preventative system that is regionally and community-based and specific and controlled to stop tragedies before they happen. This particular emergency debate, which I thank the member for Winnipeg Centre for seeking, is of particular importance to Nunavut. Nunavut has a heavy reliance on medical travel, and Winnipeg is a major hub for medical travel patients. Every day, there are medical travel patients going back and forth between Nunavut and Winnipeg. The healthcare system in Nunavut is very basic. If you go to the health center for pain and discomfort, the patient is sent home with pain relief. Sometimes months and sometimes years pass with the patient going back and forth without proper care. That same patient ends up being diagnosed with cancer or debilitating disease and diagnosed in places like Winnipeg. If that patient has been lucky enough to get a referral to a clinic there. Communities are served by health centers where the bulk of care is provided by nurses. Many communities have been forced to remain closed and only open to emergency cases because of the lack of available nurses. Some larger communities, like Iqaluit, have resident doctors. There is only one hospital in Iqaluit. Most communities access care provided by a visiting doctor or specialist very infrequently. In 2022, the Kanungitsiagutik site study showed that about 16,000 medical appointments went to Manitoba. The study found approximately 80% of births to women from the Kivadlik region occurred in Manitoba, primarily in Winnipeg. They experienced 1 month of confinement away from their familiar surroundings. The cost of one such birth is approximately $14,000 per birth. The federal non-insured health benefits program pays for medical travel, as it is a federal obligation. Unfortunately, the federal government is refusing to meet its obligation. The government of Nunavut is basically functioning as a bank for the federal government rather than investing in housing or infrastructure. The federal government is refusing to negotiate in good faith with Nunavut to the tune of $236 million for the 2025-26 fiscal year. Without timely negotiations and transfers, Nunavummiut will continue to be forced to access health care in places like Winnipeg. The 17,000 or so people being evacuated to Winnipeg, while so important, must not have my constituents fall through the cracks as Winnipeg sees a huge influx of peoples who will at some point require health care. Turning to impacts to Indigenous peoples experienced by First Nations in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The Manitoba Premier Wakineer declared a province-wide state of emergency, announcing more than 17,000 people are expected to be evacuated from wildfire-affected communities. A recent CBC story said First Nations leaders are pointing out Manitoba cities are largely booked up as people continue to seek temporary housing for evacuees fleeing communities surrounded by the wildfires. What will this government do to make sure the evacuees are properly housed, fed, and able to take care of each other? The federal government's role in wildfire protection with regard to Indigenous peoples include wildfire suppression on federal lands, also known as Indian reserves or military bases. We must be given an update as to whether this is occurring. First Nations have called on the Government of Canada to uphold their obligations to those impacted by wildfires. They are demanding that Indigenous peoples are voicing that their charter rights, particularly Section 7, rights to life, liberty, and security of the person, may be engaged if evacuees are exposed to unsafe conditions through inaction. Indigenous Services Canada holds and must exercise a fiduciary obligation to provide supports when federal action is required to protect Indigenous peoples and communities. Indigenous Services Canada must ensure that health care services are increased with the increase in people now in Winnipeg. My constituents must not lose their health care as they were forced to leave Nunavut to receive such services in the first place. Finally, the federal government must respect UNDRIP and ensure that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis truly provide their free, prior, and informed consent with this Liberal government's One Project, One Review. Canada is already on fire. Expediting mining projects will make all of our lives worse. First Nations who are evacuated cannot provide free, prior, and informed consent on projects that they may be on their territories, and their rights must not be violated. Ukaktitiyi, we implore this Liberal government to truly ensure that free, prior, and informed consent is truly the practice when working with Indigenous peoples. Koyaname ukaktitiyi.